Hey everyone, and welcome back. In today's video, I am doing a cook with me on keto hibachi at home. So we are making steak, shrimp, salad, keto fried rice, and several sauces and dressings to go along with. I hope you guys enjoy. Okay, so to begin with the mustard sauce, we are going to need a blender of some sort. I'm using my Ninja. If you have the individual like smoothie sized portion, I would definitely, or attachment, I would definitely suggest using that. Mine is dirty, which is why I'm not using that. You are going to need some heavy whipping cream. You're going to need 2 tablespoons of hot water in a bowl. You're going to need some minced garlic, some sesame seeds, and ground mustard, and that's all the ingredients that it takes to make this. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take 1 tablespoon of those sesame seeds and I'm going to put them into a baking dish of some sort. This is just a pie pan, and I have to get these into a 350-degree oven to toast. You're definitely going to want to keep your eye on these because they can toast up pretty quickly. I just use this to measure out my hot water, so it's a little damp still. So I'm just going to spread those out and pop those right into the oven. I'll keep an eye on them. My bowl with hot water, you are going to add 3 tablespoons of dry mustard. And you're going to mix this together into a paste. And then, you know what, one ingredient that I did fail to mention that you are going to need is some sort of soy sauce. We use liquid aminos here, low sodium, so you're going to need that. So I'm gonna go ahead and move this over into the blender, like so. Just gonna wipe off my spoon there. And then I'm going to go ahead and add in 3/4 cup of soy sauce. If I can get it open. And then I'm going to do a 1 teaspoon of chopped garlic. Okay, so all those ingredients are in there, and now we just have to wait for those sesame seeds to finish toasting. Once they're toasted, we're gonna pour them in and give this all a whirl. Okay, so my sesame seeds are nice and toasted. You obviously want to keep a very close eye on them because they can burn rather quickly. So I did go ahead and switch into my little blender cup. I went ahead and just washed it. Get all of these into that blender cup without spilling. Okay, so all of my seeds are in here. The entire concoction is in here. I'm gonna go ahead and put the lid on. Get everything else out of the way here. And then I'm going to just give this all a good swirl. Okay, so once that's all mixed up, it's going to look like this kind of color consistency. I'll show you guys what that looks like. So it's kind of a greeny color just from the soy. It smells amazing. So now we're gonna go ahead and add in our heavy cream. You wanna make sure that you don't add the heavy cream in before you blend it, or you are going to end up with mustard whipped cream, and that does not. So we're gonna go ahead and just stir in lightly 3 tablespoons of heavy cream. I'm gonna go ahead and move it into my little Tupperware container to store away until dinner tonight. And that's how you make the Benihana mustard sauce. Okay, so for our next recipe, we are going to go ahead and make the yum yum sauce. So for that, you are going to need mayonnaise, granulated garlic, cayenne pepper, paprika, melted butter, sugar or a sweetener of some sort. Because I'm doing a keto recipe, we're going to use this monk fruit sweetener. Use the sweetener of your choice. Some white vinegar and some tomato paste. So I'm going to go ahead and just start mixing all of the ingredients here into my cup, and then we will give it a good blend. Okay, so 1 cup of mayo. Anybody else kind of grossed up by mayo? I like it in things, but I'm not a huge fan of it like on its own. Like I put very little on sandwiches and things like that. It kind of just grosses me out. So 1 cup of mayo. In. You're gonna do 2 or 3 tablespoons of sugar. Now this is 2 times sweeter than sugar. So I'm just going to use 2 of these little packets, but do the sweetness to your liking. Uh-oh. 3 tablespoons of vinegar. One teaspoon of tomato paste. 3/4 of a teaspoon of paprika. One, 3/8 of a teaspoon of cayenne pepper. I'm just gonna go ahead and use 1/4 of a teaspoon. Or I guess just a little bit. Like so. Works for me. And same thing with the garlic powder. Like so. That's probably a little more garlic powder than recommended, but who doesn't love garlic? Oh, and then 2 tablespoons of melted butter. Go ahead and move that into another container. Like so. I feel like the ingredients that are in most of these things are things that we have in our home already, and a bottle of this yum yum sauce at the store was like $4 or $5, so why not make our own? Okay, so the last thing I'm going to do is prep my steak for the dinner. We're also going to do shrimp, but I just have to pull that out of the freezer when we get a little bit closer to time, about 45 minutes prior to cooking. I'll set the frozen shrimp into a bowl with some cold water, and that will thaw super quickly. So I'm not going to worry about that yet, but I am going to go ahead and get my steak marinating. This is a Angus, what do they call this? It's a chuck shoulder ranch steak. So it's not super lean, or it's probably going to need some love in the marinade to kind of break down the fibers a little bit to make it a little bit more tender. But honestly, once it's marinating for a little while, it will be perfectly fine. So I went ahead and just cut off a good amount of that fat on the outside. I'm going to go ahead and chunk this up like they do at Benihana's. Now I know they cut it kind of as it's cooking. I'm not going to do that just for sake of time and effort. So I'm going to go ahead and cube this all up, get it into a Ziploc with my marinade. So I did go ahead and switch my knife out. My steak is still partially frozen, and the knife that I was using just was not working well for me there. So okay, now I have all the steak into strips. I'm just going to go back and cube it and get it into the bag. Okay, so here I am taking the very teriyaki marinade from Trader Joe's. Any teriyaki marinade will work. Just watch your ingredients if you are doing keto. And I'm just putting in, I would say probably end up being about a half a cup in total. I had just a tiny bit in the bottom of the bag, and I just decided to pour it in. So I'm going to seal up that bag, mix it around really well, and stick it in my fridge to marinate for several hours. I'll go in about every hour and give it a good shake and kind of make sure that the marinade is going where it needs to go. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and make the ginger salad dressing for the typical ginger salad. Here I have half of a cut up white onion. I just did a rough dice through that since it is going into the blender. I'm going to add that to the same blender cup. I found that the little blender cup was the easiest way to go about making dressings and all of those sauces. So I'm just getting all my onion in there. And then it's half a cup of an oil. I chose to use canola oil because that's just what I had on hand. I definitely would steer away from like olive oil though. And then next you're going to need a third of a cup of rice wine vinegar. I went ahead and used the roasted garlic. That's just what I keep on hand for Asian inspired dishes. I would highly suggest keeping a bottle of this. I find that I use it quite often in cooking. So I'm going to go ahead and add that right in as well. I went ahead and added in 1 tablespoon of ground ginger instead of fresh. If you're using fresh, go ahead and use 2 tablespoons of fresh ground ginger. I used dried just because my fresh wasn't looking so hot. And then it's 2 teaspoons of ketchup. I use sugar-free or no sugar added. And then about 2 teaspoons of the liquid aminos or soy sauce. And then I also added 1 packet of that monk fruit sweetener or 2 teaspoons of sugar. Here I'm just adding in the juice of 1 lemon. And then about a tablespoon or so of minced garlic. Do that to your taste. We like garlic. Actually, I guess it would be about a half a teaspoon, or I'm sorry, a half a tablespoon, 1 teaspoon that I used. Go based on your preference on how much you like garlic. You don't really taste a ton of it in there, so that's up to you. And then you're just going to salt and pepper to taste. I went ahead and added about 1/8 of a teaspoon of pepper and about a half a teaspoon of salt. And then lastly, I went ahead and added about 2 small sections of celery. I just chopped it up pretty fine. This is more for texture than flavor, so I just quickly diced that up and threw that in the blender as well. It ended up being about probably 2 to 3 tablespoons. Then I gave that a blend, and that was that. So to begin on my fried rice or fried cauliflower rice, I'm going to add about 2 tablespoons or so of that canola oil to a really hot wok. I'm going to go ahead and throw in 1 egg and give that a good scramble. I like to scramble everything right in the same pan. I will remove that and put it in a bowl in just a few minutes here. So as you can see here, I'm just scrambling that egg really well. I'm going to go ahead and season it. I like to season my food kind of in layers as you go. So I'm going to season it well with garlic powder and onion powder. I would have done fresh garlic if I had any more left, but I had used it all to make the dressing. Some salt and pepper as well. And then I'm going to go ahead and pour that into a bowl and set that aside and then get the rest of the rice going. Okay, so in that pan, I went ahead and added the other half of the onion that I used earlier to make the dressing. So about a half of a yellow onion chopped up. I'm going to go ahead and saute those. You want to make sure that they get translucent. You definitely don't want to overcook those or burn them. So I switched over here. I'm going to make my salad. I had some iceberg lettuce that I had washed up and chopped up earlier in the week for a different dinner. So I'm just going to put that into my bowls. And then I have some cucumber slices that I'm going to put on top. And I also added a little bit of onion that you didn't get to see. Okay, so as you can see here, my onions have some good color on them. I did go ahead and add a tiny little bit more oil just to kind of keep everything coming together. And I wanted to be able to lift up those little brown bits off the bottom of my pan. So this is the rice cauliflower that I use. I get it in the frozen section. It is just the Meyer brand, but any one would work. I would probably do the original, not like the flavored ones. So I'm going to go ahead and pour that in. You again want to make sure that your pan is up pretty high so that you can kind of get a little bit of color on that and it doesn't just turn into mush. So I'm going to go ahead and give that a really good stir around. Like I said, I'm going to try and get all the little brown bits off the bottom of the pan. I'm going to go ahead and re-salt and pepper. Add my seasonings again. Like I said, I like to layer my seasonings. I don't over season, definitely, but I feel like with a riced cauliflower like this, you have to make it taste like what you want it to taste like, especially since we are doing keto. I am not adding a lot of like the peas and carrots and things like that that I would typically add into a fried rice. So as you can see here, it does have a good amount of color to it. Next, I'm just going to add some Bragg's liquid aminos in just a second here. Okay, so I went ahead and added a generous amount of that liquid aminos. Give it one last good stir around. And then I went ahead and added some sesame seeds. I probably would have toasted those off first, but I threw them in and they were fine. I added that egg back in, incorporated it really well, and then I poured all of the mixture into a bowl to serve. All right, so here I'm going to use that same pan, that same wok, and cook up the beef. Now I am using my hands to take the beef out of the marinade because I don't want that extra juice in the wok because it will end up steaming your meat rather than cooking and browning it. So I'm just using my hand. You can use a spoon, whatever. I just didn't have one on hand and my hands work just fine. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and give that a good stir. Make sure that your temperature is up pretty high. I cooked that thoroughly. I lost the footage apparently. I went ahead and put that into a pan on the side. You can see it caramelized really well in that wok. It does come perfectly clean. Now in another pan, I went ahead and started cooking up my shrimp. This is raw, deveined, and deshelled shrimp. Please do not buy and try and cook already cooked shrimp. It's so easy to cook it from raw. Recooking or reheating shrimp is just, it's not worth it, you guys. It's just so easy. So I have just a tablespoon of butter, my olive oil. I'm going to heavily season it with garlic powder and some salt and pepper. I would use fresh garlic again. Like I said, I ran out. Definitely use fresh if you have it. So what I'm going to do is just give those a really good stir around on a medium-high pan. So once the shrimp is just about done, it's nice and pink, I'm going to go ahead and juice one lemon into that pan, give it one last good turn, and it is all done. All right, so here is a quick overview of everything that we made. I hope you guys enjoyed.